Glad to have you back with us. This is old Brian, the Piedmont gardener, and we're out here in the garden today. It's late in the evening. Had to work today. Got off work. We've been getting a little bit of rain. We're thankful for that. But I need to do a little maintenance on my squash, and I tried to do this a couple days ago, but it rained me out, and so I decided, well, I'll wait a couple days, try it again. So we're going to work on the squash today. There's a couple things that we want to do. One thing we want to do is prune the squash. I don't like to leave the old dead leaves, the older leaves. Some of them's not dead, but I like to prune away the older leaves where it's already fruited, so that the end of the vine gets all the energy. And I think what it does is it opens up the squash a little bit and allows the pollinators to get in there and get to those flowers, because if you don't have pollinators, you're not going to have any squash. Well, unless you pollinate by hand, but that's a whole different subject. The other thing in our area, and it's probably the case anywhere you can grow squash, there's an insect called the squash vine borer. And what that insect does, it's a flying insect, but it lands on your squash. It preys on your squash. The insect, he flies around, he finds your squash plant. And you got your leaves out here, your big old leaves up top. And what that insect's going to do is going to go up underneath the leaf, and it's going to lay some little eggs. They're sort of a copper color, gold colored egg. And he lays a few little eggs under that leaf. Now, if you're diligent, you can walk through the squash patch once a day, flip your leaves up, and destroy the eggs. Just mash them, you know. Sorry about that. We had to take a little break because of the air compressor. But like I said, you can just go through and take your thumb, you know, or put some gloves on if that grosses you out. But you can just mash those little eggs. Now that's if you're diligent. We all are busy. Most of us that garden also have a full-time job. So doing that every day, along with taking care of the rest of the garden, picking beans and harvesting tomatoes and cucumbers, pickling and canning, it's hard to keep up with it all. So what I like to do, and I try to be mindful, I don't use a whole lot of chemicals on my garden. I use what I have to. You know, if I don't use any, then I'm wasting my time. So what I do use is a little bit of this 7 dust, and it's just 7. You can buy it any of the box stores, any of the hardware stores have 7 dust. But what I like to do is use it sparingly. I don't want to go out there and just dust all my squash, because we've got the honeybee and the bumblebee and the little flies and the gnats, the beneficial insects that pollinate the squash. That's part of the process. And if you kill everything, the only way your squash is going to get pollinated is if you pollinate it by hand. Well, we ain't got time to do that either. But using your controls sparingly, I think you can sort of meet in the middle. You're not 100% organic, but you're not just going crazy. So what I like to do is I like to prune the old leaves that's on the squash. As a squash vine, as it grows out, it has its leaves, and then it has its male flowers, the tall ones, you know. And then it's got the female flower, and then you get a squash. Once those squash have picked, you know, all the flowers is out on the end of the vine. Now, with that being said, this squash vine borer, he's going to fly along. He's going to lay his eggs up underneath here. We talked about that before. The eggs are going to hatch. And the little worm that comes out of those eggs is going to start to crawl down toward the bottom of the squash plant. And when he gets down here close to the root, close to where the plant goes in the ground, he's going to bore into the squash, and he's going to eat the inside of your squash vine. And he's going to sever all the capillaries and stuff, the nutrition that's coming from the root to the squash plant. When that happens, well, your squash plant can't receive any nutrition or any water from the roots. Therefore, it dies. Now, I've heard of people talking about digging the worm out, you know, splitting it open and digging him out, and that probably works. There again, another time-consuming process. So what I like to do is and I like to do my pruning. Now, my pruning, not only does it help me to get my control in the right location, but it opens up the top of the squash plant a little bit, so that when my pollinators do come in, then they can see the flower. So I get better pollination by removing some of those leaves, some of that overgrowth that's not needed for the plant. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to prune as the vine grows. And I usually wait till my squash plants are starting to produce. That way the mature flowers, or the flowers, the young flowers that are going to be producing squash in the future, are out here away from our control. We put our control close to the base of the plant, and when that little old worm comes down there, then he's going to meet his demise when he gets in this sevin dust. What that's going to do, that's going to extend our season, and our plants are going to be healthier. We're going to get more squash. We're going to put our control in the right location so that we minimize harming the beneficial insects, but at the same time we're going to be able to control these borers. So let's get out to the garden. Y'all excuse me, I'm flapping and scratching, and it's mosquito time. Just the way it is. We're in the south. You got mosquitoes. We've had some recent rain and they're excited. So let's get out to the garden, and I'm going to take you through the process. It's real simple. It ain't going to take long. The rest of the video is probably going to be shorter than this conversation that we had, but I wanted to explain it to you with me not out there fumbling around, you know. And we'll reiterate, but let's get on out there. Okay, so I think I've set you up for probably the best view that I can give you. You can see this late in the evening. Now here's our squash plant. I'm going to try to look around here, show you what we got. You see we got our vine coming out of the ground, and our squash, we picked some squash here, out here, but we got our new squash coming on right here. And see these leaves right here? Now, here's a prime example. I'm going to cut a leaf off, and I'm going to show you these eggs on this thing. If I can get these, get myself working here. Now, just so happened, first leaf I looked at, if you look right here, you're going to see, just right in there, you're going to see them eggs. That's from a squash bug or a squash vine borer, some kind of critter that's getting ready to destroy my squash. I'm going to throw them down. I'm going to make sure that they don't go any further than where they was at right there. Back in here, we're going to look again. You can see the squash. So back here, the fruiting is happening out here. The flowers are out here at the end. Back here at the base of the plant, these leaves has pretty much served their purpose. So we're going to get them out of there. And you don't want to remove too many, but you want to remove enough. As this plant continues to flower, see out here, our pollinators are going to be out here on the end. Like I said, our borer, he's going to get on this leaf. He's going to follow this stalk right to the base. He's going to drill a hole in there, and he's going to kill my plant. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little of this sevin. It's a dust. And I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to put it right down here. Now, the bees ain't going to be attracted to that. The bees are going to be attracted to these flowers out here. So we're minimizing the impact. Is it 100%? Probably not. But we're doing the best we can to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think a lot of times that's what it takes. You gotta have some balance. If I went through here with triazicide or something and sprayed all these plants, I wouldn't have a bug on them, and I wouldn't have no squash. So I'm gonna go out through here and I'm gonna look and see if there's a fruit that's on these plants that's not been pollinated. Well, unfortunately for the video, but fortunately for me, I don't have any unpollinated fruit. I'm gonna try to describe it for you. You're gonna have a squash, and it's gonna start making a little bitty squash. But the end of it, the bell end, the part that starts to get big, it's not gonna get big. It's gonna stay small. And then usually you'll have some decay that starts to happen, and it'll pretty much just mold and die and go away. That's because you're not getting pollination. That's because you're getting too aggressive with your chemicals, or you got too many leaves and the bees can't see everything and they ain't getting in there. So if you do what I showed you right here, if that's your thing, if you don't want to use chemicals, don't use them. But if you do what I showed you right here, you're going to cut down on that borer and you're going to prune back some of these leaves. You're going to end up with better pollination. Be easier to pick. It don't hurt the plant any. It's actually a benefit to the plant to prune these leaves, get rid of the old growth. As you can see, some of the leaves that I picked, they were starting to turn yellow and had disease on them. You're going to increase the airflow in the plant. We have a problem around here with what's called downy mildew. And if you can't get the moisture out of things, once we have a lot of wet weather, then the heat kicks back in, we got downy mildew. So this will help with that. But that's how I prune my squash and try to fight off the squash bugs, the enemies in the garden. And so until next time, I hope this helps somebody. This is Brian, the old Piedmont Gardener. Y'all have a good day.